off and I'll pass it to you.
Good deal.
All right. Welcome, everyone. It's 1 o'clock. It is Thursday. We have a nice short week here in the U.S. anyway, and I'm pretty stoked. So I'm Steve. I'm the host. I'm the creator of MSP Webinars, and welcome to another installment. Today, we're going to have a really fun one, but first let me tell you about some things we've got coming up. Tuesday next week, we're going to be joined by Pulseway. And no offense, Eric, but Pulseway is going to teach us about their RMM product. And they may even talk about their PSA product a little bit. I think, you know, if you're in the market for a PSA RMM, combo, give it a look. That's all I'll say about that right now. And then Thursday next week is the roundtable. So if you go to the website tomorrow, I'm hoping to have a whole new look and feel for the upcoming webinar section. So that way you guys will be able to see not only the upcoming webinars, but also the upcoming member breakout sessions. And I think it's going to make it a lot easier for you guys to be able to find things. Today, however, we are joined by the one, the only, Eric Harless. I almost said Eric Hairless. It would have worked that way too.
It does, actually. It spell checks that way sometimes, so you wouldn't have been too far off base.
So Eric is with SolarWinds Backup, and Eric, you're actually an engineer over there, right?
Actually, a senior product manager. So I do roll up into the engineering side.
That's good.
So I know, I know. As I said, I know where all the skeletons are buried and and everything with the product. So I should be able to take you through a good roundup today of feature, function, and then of course address any questions that come up.
Well, perfect. Well, hey, thanks for doing this today. And I actually launched a poll. So for those of you that are here in Zoom, the answers are anonymous. I'm not going to, go run tell Eric, oh, these guys aren't using your stuff. You should go talk to them, because he doesn't know who's here or any of your emails anyway. So if you guys could answer that just so we can talk about it later, that would be awesome. I'd really appreciate that. Meanwhile, Eric, why don't you kind of dive in? I think you're going to show us a demo today of SolarWinds Backup, which I hear is kind of the bee's knees in backup products.
So we're pretty proud of it. I've been with the organization now 5 years this week, actually. So I've seen it come through a couple different variants and names. The product itself evolved from IASO Online Backup, which was originally acquired by GFI Software, which became Logic Now, which merged and incorporated to become SolarWinds MSP. So we've got some history here. It is software that originally started as an OEM agreement between the two organizations and turned into a purchase. And so it is an acquisition to a certain extent, but all of our development, all of our work, and all of our integrations are done in-house. We still have that original development team. The product, and let me actually get my sharing turned on so we can see that. So the product's available for anybody that would like to start a trial. SolarWindsMSP.com, select backup from the product section here on the left, and you've got the ability to request a quote or trial now. Also from the same UI, you're going to be able to log into the various SolarWinds MSP products, so you can log directly into backup. And you'll get a web-based management console. It's a full multi-tenant application. It is cloud first, meaning you have to have an internet connection to utilize this, but we have hybrid capability as well, so that you can have local copies of your data for rapid recovery and that extra layer of protection that your customers want and need. Today we'll be talking about the standalone version of SolarWinds Backup. So I know you mentioned another RMM solution out there. You don't have to utilize SolarWinds RMM solutions, whether it be in Central or the remote monitoring and management offering, to use SolarWinds Backup. We can work right alongside anybody else's RMM solution. It would be silly of us to think that people are only going to use our application. So we've built Backup to work across the board, but we do have two specific integrations of it that work very closely with our RMM products. So you can have the integrated choice, or you can have a standalone option. Feature and functionality is going to be about 95% the same. It's really just a question of different deployment and different reporting structures. And we're obviously constantly striving to narrow that feature gap and have feature parity across all the platforms. But talk to your account managers here at SolarWinds MSP, and they can tell you which one is best or right for your environment, while you're doing your evaluations. So if we start that login process and we want to go into SolarWinds Backup, you're going to be presented with a web-based management console. And I'm already logged in here to save you the delay in time frame of two-factor login and those kind of pieces. But you're going to get presented with this single pane of glass, this at a moment's notice view of what's going on. So you can see I'm logged in as HH Computing IT. That's my MSP level. And I've got 19 active devices under management here. I'll expand that out a little bit. No workstations, 19 servers, roughly 2 terabytes of data selected, taking up about 4.5 or 4.25 terabytes of data in the cloud. That's all my retention periods, all my archiving. I'm keeping 90 days of retention plus end of month archiving capability. So we're looking at about a 2x, a little bit over 2x utilization today from a capacity perspective with that level of retention. So very, very nice data deduplication, compression, and encryption that is performed by the client locally. And it does that local, sends the data over a TLS 1.2 tunnel to the cloud. So your data is fully encrypted in our data centers. The data centers are going to exist globally. Let's see, at last count, that was 17 data centers in 12 countries on 4 continents. And these are all ISO 27001 certified secure data center locations. The environment we're looking at here, as I said, it is my my MSP or my sample MSP environment. This is a lab environment that I maintain. So it is multi-tenant. I've got SolarWinds North America, HEH Computing IT, and then I've created individual regional offices to represent my end customers, or if you're looking at it from an IT pros perspective, your branch offices, your campuses, your medical centers, what have you. It'll conform to any type of distributed environment. So I can see all of my devices at a root level, or I can drill down into individual locations to look at just those systems in that location, represented by these various columns down here. So device name, customer, the types of data sources we're protecting, at a glance here, the selected size and the amount of used storage for individual devices, a color bar to look at the success and failure over the last 28 days. Obviously, we keep more than 28 days if you like to retain the data longer. You can do that, but you can mouse over here and look at any given day to see how that status was. The last status of your backup operation, any errors that might have existed here. We had one that was not started. I've got a linkable error that I can drill into. When the last successful backup was. So, backups today for some of these devices, some of these are virtual machines. Looks like they've been off here for the last 2 weeks. So those probably need to be restarted. And you notice that there's an alert or a warning next to these showing that you are out of compliance. Same kind of visibility in the pie charts up above. So my breakout of servers and workstations, my breakout of success and failure. So 95% of these have been backed up successfully. 19 completed, 1 was unsuccessful. Now, it doesn't tell you when it was successful. It just means that the last time it ran, it was successful. Over here to the right, only 15% of the devices have been backed up in the last 24 hours. That means that 85% here are more than 48 hours since they were last backed up. So those are going to be my troubleshooting items. I didn't want to give you guys a green dashboard to say, oh, look, it's perfect all the time. As you know, with backup, you run into issues. You can run into problems. Users make changes. They modify configurations. They stand up new servers, and without telling you what's incorporated there's new applications. Hey, where'd the SQL server come from? You get that virtual machine or server or application sprawl. So you need to be able to identify and protect that. So all of these charts are active. So if we come in here and click on the 3 that are less than 24 hours, I get just that filter. If I want to go and look at just servers or just workstations, I hit that, I get that filter. I want to look at the ones that were unsuccessful. I click that link. Oops, let me reset again. I click that link, and here is my single unsuccessful system. So lots of drill down capabilities, and there's tons of other filters and options here to show you exactly what you want to see. For instance, the duration of a last backup, the current software version, the manufacturer of the hardware. In this case, it's a Microsoft Hyper-V virtual machine, but you'd see that it was a Dell, an HP, Optiplex, or whatever. Once again, tons of other systems of settings over here. I'm looking at external IP, internal IP. That's a great way to determine that since these are remote machines, if you're looking at performance issues, well, these machines have got performance issues. They're all going through a specific gateway, while other machines that don't have performance issues are going through a different route. Internal IP addresses, synchronization status between the cloud and the remote, and all of those columns are customizable. So if I want to drag it over to the left here someplace to store it so I can see what I'm working on, I can do that. I want to add new columns for tons of different items, such as the amount of data that's archived, when it was created, the language that the UI is displayed in, the email address, when the service is set to expire. There's a good 300 different columns here that you can display and customize for the exact status of your backups for troubleshooting or billing or day-to-day monitoring and management. Since it's about managing by exception, we want you to have the problem systems at your fingertips with the right tools to diagnose them. So as you modify and adjust these views, you have the option to come over here and save the views. So I can save my recovery view, a view for cleanup, unsuccessful systems. Those views available to you when you log back in and be able to sort through and filter through new customers, problem customers, what have you. These views are also available in your inbox. So you can set these up to email out on a daily or weekly basis. That way you're going to get a summary of the top 200 devices that meet this criteria for failures, over quota, successful. You tell me. That way you can treat your servers and your workstations differently and manage them accordingly, going to different teams inside of your organization. As you've got 10 devices or 20 devices here, it's not a big deal to look at them at one time. But when you get to 200 devices, 300 devices, 1,000 devices, and I've got partners in all of those ranges, you're going to find that managing by exception is going to be a lot more useful. Now, the question might be, how do I get to that 100 devices or that 1,000 devices? Because you've got to deploy this. We are, like I said, a multi-tenant solution. We're designed to allow the MSP to work from his operations center, from his location, without having to go physically on site to do a lot of the backup management deployment. We're going to work through the customer's firewall. So you've got some abilities here to do remote management. If we come in and grab a device here, bear with me a second, I'll get to one I want to work with. So if I come in and grab a device here and select that device, I'll get some more details on what's going on with that device. So an overview of the device configuration, its backup history until the beginning of time. So the history of every backup session that's been done for that machine. We'll show you the last 28 days here in this first screen, and then the ability to expand to look at all sessions. So what you can see here is that this last backup that ran here at 1 p.m. Took about a minute for the file and folders, about 3 minutes and 5 seconds for system state. Those are still local only backups, meaning that the backup completed, but it exists only on that local storage, that local speed vault option that we have, the hybrid backup component. And as it slowly synchronizes up to the cloud, that L will go away to represent that it's been fully synchronized, and you've got offsite protection, cloud protection, electronic vaulting, however you want to think of that offsite copy. But you're not fully protected until that copy gets offsite to be covered from things like ransomware or total site loss. We're a client-side data deduplication solution. I never send the same data across the wire twice. So you could say that we're WAN optimized. So when you look over here, you can see this particular VM, it's about 13 gigs of files and folders, about 11 gigs of system state, 104,000 files, 96,000 objects in system state. It didn't have to process through those 24 gigs of data. It had to process through about 330 megs of file system data and about 200 megs of system state data, about 1,500 files total. That's clickable to see the files that were processed. It only had to transfer up to the cloud, 2.2 megabytes of file system and just under 2 megs of system state data. So that's the deduplication in work or in process. The average daily change rate we're going to see across all of our customers is going to be somewhere in the neighborhood of 1% or less. Obviously, it'll vary by customer.
Hold on a second, Eric. I'm so sorry to interrupt. So the processed size and the transferred size, why are those different?
Oh, so we are a sub-file level data deduplication product. So I look at the total file size. That was my 13.4 gigs here. That's 104,000 files. Of that, 335 megabytes of those files had some kind of change inside of them. That's my 1,379 files. Because I don't have to transfer the entire file again, I just need to get the portion of the file that's changed at a byte level. I cracked them open. I had to transfer 2.21 megabytes of data up to the cloud in order to get those changes out of those files.
That's amazing.
So 2.21 megabytes of 13.4 gigs. Now, an Exchange server, a database server, they're going to have a slightly higher change rate. It might be in the 1.2 to 1.5, even the 2 or 3x daily change rate. If you're doing Hyper-V backups and you're getting them at a host level, you got page files and swap files that end up getting backed up as well that you wouldn't see in a file system backup. That's going to raise my transfer rate. But you can get very creative here, creating selections and filters to even eliminate a lot of these removed files. So this last list here is a list of files that were in the previous day's backup but are no longer in today's backup. This information is good because it allows you to fine-tune your backup. It allows you to see that you're backing up things maybe you shouldn't, to see what the largest processed or transferred file was. So for instance, if I were to just click on this, it's going to give me a list of what files it processed through and actually how much data it was able to dedupe out of it. So we'll give that a second to look at. So for the most part here, you see the size is this, but the transfer size is 0. That means that file was fully deduped. The only thing that might have changed would have been a permission or some kind of security attribute to it. If I sort by transferred size, objects.data, update.log, various log files, my user profiles, event log information, 15 megs, I only had to transfer 49 kilobytes. If you saw something that was really large here, like an OST file, a .bak, a dump file, that could indicate that you're backing up things that really don't have any business being protected or that you may not want to have in the cloud. You find an ISO file in here that you're backed up. Well, why are you sending ISO and storing ISO files to the cloud when you've got the original file or you can pull it from an external source? Why are you backing up your corporate Google Drive on every user's workstation when you can get an authoritative source backed up from another location? Those kind of things. Make sense?
Yeah, this is good so far.
Cool. So the overview, history, statistics, just high-level summary of what's going on here, size of storage, use storage, operating system. This is good information because you're not always looking at your RMM. You may not know exactly the components, and we don't want you swapping back and forth. So we give you a lot of the control that you might have inside of an RMM solution here natively in backup. For instance, the ability to launch the backup client. This will allow me to launch a backup instance, or I've actually got a continuous restore, a recovery instance, an offline virtual machine, if you will, that can be booted up in the event of a disaster. And we'll talk more about the recovery options here in a few minutes, but remote control to launch the backup interface, make your configuration settings for that client without needing a third-party remote control tool or even opening up a VPN connection to the customer. Plus, you don't disrupt the customer. So it's not like you're taking over their desktop and doing all these settings. You can manage backup remotely without interfering with their day-to-day operations. There's also diagnostics. So internal info page here. So the same diagnostics are available, and I'll pull this for, let me pull it for a system that I know I can reach. There we go. If I don't get a couple timeouts, it wouldn't be a real demo, right? So internal info page, the backup version. Internal info is going to do some system level diagnostic, and it runs in real time so that you can, it's the equivalent of getting a dump of your disk structure, looking at high levels of your system event log. It lets you look at profiles and configurations that you made for the device. And it's the equivalent of running a VSS admin locally. So this machine, it's a Windows virtual machine running 2012 R2 with 2 processors and 4 gigs of RAM. So, minimal configuration, not something I'd recommend a lot of work to be done on. Environmental variables, registry entries, what backup features are turned on. But more importantly, because VSS can be a good thing for backup and it can be your downfall. we can get information here on VSS services. So is VSS running? How is it configured? So I've got up to 12.5 gigs available as maximum storage, but I'm not using any local snapshots right now. We are VSS aware, VSS enabled, so I use VSS to get open file protection. It's going to get your SQL, your Exchange, your SharePoint, so that you've got live, hot, application-aware backups. We take care of all the log truncation, log management for those apps, and we snap them at the beginning of the backup so that it is application consistent, not crash consistent, and that's very, very important. We do support other apps, though, like MySQL, Oracle, and then we've got pre and post commands so that you can do any type of custom shutdown for your own custom applications or databases. This VSS admin, though, for each of your writers that are visible, you'll see the status, last error if there was one. As we come down further, you can see what writers are on the system. So if there's a competitive backup and recovery product on here that has its own writer, we'll see that. We'll see snapshots and environments that have been created in the past. You can see if they're overlapping. And you might ask, well, why is that important? When you've got multiple backup applications on the same machine, some people think of that like having a belt and suspenders. You've got double protection. And it's not untrue if you configure them properly. The issue that you can run into, though, is if you have them overlapping schedule-wise or overlapping in series, meaning full incremental differentials interrupted by a third-party backup, you could break the chain. So you don't want SQL Enterprise Manager doing SQL dumps and then another product coming in and trying to do offsite backups of that same SQL database in the middle. You'll create a case where it's more like trying to put two belts through the same set of belt loops and you bust a loop. The worst thing you could possibly have here is two backup applications and you've got two non-recoverable environments. So seeing what's going on here, seeing the schedule, seeing the overlap, and just planning those out, especially if you're doing a migration. If you're ending the end of life for one product and you're moving over to another one, scheduling them and turning them off at the right times, or setting them up so some is in the beginning of the week or the end of the week, or at least on the hour, on the half hour, during the morning, during the afternoon. It can be very, very important so that you don't create an environment where you have no protection and you think you've got double protection. So
one of the questions is your platform stored in AWS or Azure? And what redundancy do you have to ensure that we have access to the portal in case one of your data centers goes down?
Okay, so our cloud services, the central management arm or the platform that we logged into here, this backup.management portal, is a cloud service. It is hosted by us, so it's not hosted in Amazon or Azure, and it is a redundant platform. So if this system were to go down, if there were maintenance windows, things like that, it does fail over to an alternate environment. We do schedule some 15-minute or less downtime windows occasionally where we would not bring over the failover environment. But those are scheduled ahead of time and with alerts and notices on our site. The storage, as I mentioned, multiple data centers, multiple countries on 4 continents. Those data centers are private colo data centers where we lease rack space. We do own all of our own equipment, our storage nodes in those environments, and your data is stored in a way that one of those nodes acts as a owner, a traffic cop, if you will, the home node. And then there are cabinet nodes or storage nodes that we're going to relate with that. So if a node were down, a node were offline for maintenance, having a hard drive replaced, whatever, then the system would route you to another node. So you're not going to have an availability issue. You're not sending all of your data to one location. It could even go to another data center. So we've got multiple data centers in the US that we could route to if one particular data center were down or not reachable due to ISP or route issues. From a recovery perspective, go ahead.
Oh, and I'm sorry. I just wanted to clarify some of that. What about compliance where the data needs to stay in a particular country?
Data sovereignty, excellent question. So I'll talk US and Canada right now. Obviously, we could talk European Union or the UK. So our data is designed to stay in the country or the region where it is configured or provisioned. So if you sign up as a partner through the US, your data is going to end up in our US data centers. It does not route out of the country or to other locations. If you are a multinational company, you can create new partners or new sub-entities and change that location. So if you are dealing with a Canadian firm as well and that data must stay in Canada, you can configure a new multi-tenant sub-partner so that here's my Canadian location, here's my Australian location, which would go to Sydney, or my French location, which would be in Paris, and so on.
Awesome.
I can.
And then you were about to answer the second part of my first question about, I think, the redundancy and things like that. But
Yes.
It also sounded like you already answered that too. So
I probably did a little bit. So the redundancy, from a cloud perspective, this is backup data, so it does exist on a storage node. I'm not duplicating storage nodes. I'm not keeping two copies in the cloud. But since we are a hybrid data protection solution, I do allow you to maintain a local redundant copy yourself, which can be used in the event that it was lost in the location. They can resync and so on. That local speed vault I've talked about a little bit, and I'll show that to you here in just a moment. It allows you to maintain on-premise at your customer or your site a full mirror of the cloud data that's fully deduped, compressed, and encrypted. And it's got two benefits. It's one, it's redundant. Number two, it acts as a backup or restore cache so that you can get data faster than WAN speeds. You can get it at LAN or LAN speeds. So I'm going to pull up a column here, which I don't have default right now. Bear with me a second. So I'll get storage location. Let's see.
And while you're pulling that up, will you sign a BAA for HIPAA compliance?
Yes, we can do those. It does go through our legal department. You just talk to your account manager, and they can work with you on that. The data itself is AES 256-bit encrypted, sent over a TLS 1.2 tunnel. The data existing in the data center is nondescript, non-self-describing, and our staff, the majority of our staff, do not have access to that other than our DevOps guys.
So DevOps can access the data if we ask them to.
DevOps can access the location, but the data itself is still ones and zeros. We don't have access to your encryption key. You can control private key encryption so that you control the passphrase that's used for the encryption, or you can optionally choose to use our system managed passphrase technology, where we control the encryption key and manage it for you as part of the application. But even our employees don't have access to request that. Only specific security user roles inside of your tenant level can ever request that encryption key.
So hypothetically, if Hillary Clinton had her server backed up to SolarWinds backup, and there was a subpoena to SolarWinds backup to provide that data that's backed up, all you're able to provide is the encrypted data. You have no ability to decrypt that data and provide it.
Here's a disk with the ones and zeros, and random ones and zeros at that point. Without that passphrase or without that encryption key that was deployed by you, the MSP, or by your end customer, you can't recover that data. And that's a sad story to tell a customer if they forget their key, which is why we do offer some of the internal management. It really boils down to your customer and the environment. If you're going to sign the BA, or if you're working through that approach and you're going to manage and store these in some unsecure method in your location, where there's potential for loss, or where a technician could walk out with the key, then you might want to consider our internal management. That way, you've got a secure location. You can restrict access a little bit easier, especially if you're dealing with hundreds of devices, a lot of workstations where you may not be making the same margins you do on server protection, and possibly a different level of protection, different level of retention. I could talk to that just a little bit. So, for instance, any of these devices that are listed here on the left-hand side that have this little underscore and a random identifier at the end, they were deployed through an automatic deployment methodology that it defines and records an encryption key for the system. I don't have to keep track of that myself. So if I were to come in and look at this device and come to modification, as a MSP user, and I'm logged in at a high level right now, I can see a device name, I can see a password, that's for redeployment, but I'm going to be prompted for that encryption key before it'll ever install. There is no option here. You don't see an encryption option or an ability to request it. If I were a security officer, an authorized user, which can only exist at the MSP or end customer level, then you would have an option here in your UI to request your encryption key. You'll get a one-time use passphrase, so you could use it for one install, or 24, or it'll expire in a 24-hour period if not used. So that way you don't have the ability for a technician to walk out and then have this cache of encryption keys that could give him access to the data. So it's about not just protecting the data today, it's about protecting the data in the future. I brought up a column here. Let me see if I actually hit save on it. I was talking, so I may not have hit the save button. Here we go. So storage location. So here you can see storage location. This is where the home node is configured. So the majority of these were configured for the United States locations. Although this one, when I configured this CentOS box, I specifically chose the Netherlands as a data location for it. So you do have a fair amount of control in the standalone product to define the region where the data is going to be stored. In the integrated versions that we have, the storage location is going to be locked or tied to the region that you sign up for. So you're going to have a little bit less control about getting things out of your main country or out of your original location. If you are a multinational provider, however, then we can pre-configure some of those backend items for you, and you'll just make sure you put them to the right container. If you put something in the wrong container, we can take care of that for you as well and have the data, the ones and zeros, moved on the back end as part of a migration. For instance, you signed up in Czechoslovakia. We don't have a data center there right now, so the data ends up in Germany. As soon as we add a data center there, we could, at your request, rehome the data to that new data center location.
That's fantastic.
Okay.
We have a few more questions, if you don't mind.
Yeah, go ahead.
Are you able to comply with NIST regulations?
NIST. NIST is an interesting one. So I don't do specific tests or certification efforts against NIST. I do comply with a lot of their checkbox items, if you will. The AES 256-bit encryption, the TLS tunnels, the fact that we've got an ISO 27001 certification on the product and the development process can go a long way toward checking those boxes. But no, I don't specifically go and run through a NIST compliant or a NIST certification. And the same can be said for a lot of the other ones out there. There's a ton of different little certs. The backup product itself is not, you're not going to find a lot of backup products that are going to say, oh yes, NIST checkbox, because there's other pieces here. Because you control the encryption keys, you control some of the access to your facility, the login to the UI, how do you store your credentials to log into this console, things like that, that make it more than just a backup question. But I do conform to a lot of the pieces, yes.
Next question. What are the different restore options and how can they be accessed?
Beautiful. Excellent segue. So the backup client, and we haven't really talked about deployment here. We haven't talked about what the agent looks like on a system, but there is a software component, an agent that runs on the client. And we've got several deployment methodologies to get that out, either one at a time or en masse. So you can link this to a software distribution tool, to another RMM product, to batch deploy. The client itself is available here in the download section. So there's a backup client. We have that backup client can do file, application, volume level restores, directories, individual files, what have you, to a particular point in time. And you're going to get presented with a browsable UI. You select the files you want to restore and put them either directly back where they originally came from, or you can do a redirected restore to an alternate location. There is bare metal recovery. Bare metal recovery, we've got an executable and an ISO image that are available. The executable creates a USB boot stick. The ISO, obviously, you would burn to CD. Do not burn the ISO to a USB stick via something like Rufus. It's not designed for that. If you want a USB stick, we've got a tool specifically for that purpose. But this will load a version of Windows PE, light version of our client, allow you to lay down the full system, disk structures, partition information, and the selected volumes that you want. We synthesize the recovery from a file and folder and a system state backup. So you don't have to lay down the entire machine. You could use just a single volume or even just individual directories. But doing a bare metal recovery, if you don't recover enough to boot, then it's kind of a wasted point. So you could remove the dump directories and the download directories during a restore to get it back up and running quicker, and then come back in and restore the database and the other items later after your customers are back in business. So it gives you a lot of control. It's not all or nothing. There is a recovery console, and I'll bring that up here in just a second, that allows you to do virtual disaster recovery, so physical to virtual, either proactively or reactively. So you can create a VM in Hyper-V or VMware or VHD and VMDK files on disk that look like the last backup of the system. Those can be created on demand. It recovers the entire image, or they can be set up to run continuously in the background and just applies delta changes. So imagine it's 2 hours to 4 hours or longer to restore because of the size of the environment. On demand, it could be 15 minutes to 45 minutes just to apply delta changes, effectively however long it took to back up the changes. So that's a nice, convenient business continuity style option. Virtual Drive is a tool that we have available that makes the backup dedupe store, the one in our cloud or the one in your local vault or both, look like a virtual file system attached to drive letter B that's mountable, searchable, browsable, so you can pull out individual files from an Explorer style view. So there's lots of restore options available to you. If I switch out quickly to the client, let's see here. This is what I want. This is the backup client. This is what's installed on the local machine. And we bring this up in your local web browser. You got a calendar view of what you've backed up. You got a backup tab where you can see what's configured for selection, files and folders, excluding the O and Q drive, system state, the ability to edit and choose what you want to protect down to a file or volume level of granularity. Restore, same kind of capabilities. So restore, I want to do a file and folder restore. I'll pick my date. I'll go back to the 27th at 2 p.m. Volume C, I want to get my admin tool and my drivers. And you know what? Let me go actually. Let me delete something for us really quick here. Admin tool and config.msi. Wasn't planning to delete anything on the fly, but I will do that for you guys.
And I'm sorry, what do you mean?
So I'm gonna delete some files, and we'll actually recover these.
Oh dear.
No backup software should be asked to do that on the fly, right? We'll get drivers back as well. Okay. I need a recycle bin. Where's my recycle bin? I don't want to have any smoke and mirrors for you guys here, so. Empty recycle bin. Okay. So to original location, to a new location, skip files that have not changed, and start a restore. We'll choose to overwrite.
I like that. And I gotta say, this is a really nice interface.
Thank you. It's taken some time. We've evolved from a thick client that you installed, which looked very Windows NT 4 or 351. If you want to go back to something that's pretty slick. From a troubleshooting perspective, while this is doing its restore here, estimated time remaining, files processed, files changed. I can actually come in and look and see what's going on. So we've got live logs that are debug logs that we can look at and see what's going on here. Block contab, process file stream, node for stream, entering restore of this file, leaving restore. So full logging while things are going on. This is actually debug level logging so that a tech could look at this, or you could look at this while you're doing something. This is more detailed than actually goes into the default standard logs that are stored to the system, unless you turn on the debug logging. So you can look you can look proactively to see what's going on without having to go pre-configured debug level outputs.
All right, so backup systems are only as good as they are being properly configured.
Yes.
Maintained, tested. So what kind of gotchas are you seeing people doing, or more importantly, not doing?
Well, people don't test. They used to say test your backups, test your tapes, bring the tapes back and test them later to make sure that they haven't degraded, things like that. Well, we're cloud-based, it's on disk, so that's not an issue. We do consistency checks and inventory checks as well to make sure that the data is still where it's supposed to be and is available. But a really good test, especially in the day and age of virtualization, is that virtual disaster recovery that we talked about, or that I mentioned a little bit ago. Our ability to stage the restores, create a VM behind the scenes, boot the VM, create a screenshot for you and post it on our dashboard or email it to you is a great way to prove that you've got recoverable systems. Now, we don't go in and start, running applications and running scripts against items and things like that, but it gives you a bootable system to say, okay, if the system were to fail, I could recover. Sadly, most customers don't do that. They either don't have the resources, they don't have the extra hardware. We try to make it simple. You could even use something like the Windows 10 Hyper-V role in a Windows 10 Pro and recover to that environment. So yeah, you're not going to recover a 16-core, 48-gig machine to that environment, but you could recover it in a much lower scaled configuration. See that the disks are there, go through and mount them and browse them to see that you've got the data. So we can get selective on what you restore, the entire system or just a database, just a file structure, things like that. So
and you mentioned screenshots.
Yes.
Is this like automated, or are you like
fully automated behind the scenes? We restore the VM, restore the system as a VM, or update the offline VM. After the restore completes, we boot it, take a screenshot, shut it back down, post it to our dashboard, or email it to you. Let me actually show you a little bit of that. So that restore completed. Just a quick summary. I'll wrap it. If I look at my calendar, file and folder restore completed, 2,600 files, processed around 2 gigs of data, a lot of small files. It only had to transfer a gig because it was deduped. It took 2 minutes to go through. Plus all my other hourly backup operations happening over here, none of which are taking more than 6 minutes right here. So the restore side, when doing restore, that virtual disaster recovery I mentioned is what gives me the options that I talked about. My recovery target could be a ESX server, for instance. I have an option here to start the virtual machine after restore and take a screenshot. Now, fair warning here, if you start a virtual machine that happens to be a domain controller on the same production network as your running domain controller or Exchange server or what have you, you're going to cause problems. We're creating VMs that have the same IP address and same configuration. So just like you cloned it, if you start it up, you're going to cause problems. So I always recommend you do this in an isolated network behind a NAT, a VLAN, a different subnet, or at a colo, a data center, in the cloud someplace. So there's things you can do here. We do ship the software with just a slight amount of rope, enough rope to get yourself into trouble. But it's a very, very powerful tool. You can do a lot of things. We don't constrain you or restrict you. You can use this to build your own BDR appliance, if you will. So you've got a recovery standby environment at the MSP's location, a colo, a data center, or on-premise at the customer's location, or both.
Man, this is a lot to type. So Eric, I don't know if you see it, but I'm actually hand typing closed captions.
Are you really?
Okay. For the people wondering, like, where did these closed captions come from, and why are they not at all what Eric just said?
I might have to go back and help you out with those later. So here, let me show you the dashboard. Let me see if I can give you a recovery view that.
And just to clarify real quick, so the recovery view is actually requiring you to have some type of local system or like an Azure environment like ready for you to test. It's not the same as a Datto, as where it's going to automatically turn on that VM without networking enabled so it doesn't screw anything up, take the screenshot, and then shut it back down.
So I'm doing roughly the same thing that they are. So they'll take the image, they'll boot it with the internal native hypervisor that they have. They've got a hypervisor in there, Zen probably, but I don't recall exactly. Anyway, they've got a hypervisor inside of there. They boot it up and they isolate the network. In my boot process, I'm not isolating a network. I'm not. So it is up to you to ensure that the environment you're recovering to, the network configuration are set to be a private network configuration behind a VLAN, behind a NAT. But effectively, we're doing the same kind of things. Let's see here. And I want to turn on my, I'm going to get my recovery view here. So here's a saved view that I have. So I've done some bare metal recoveries on these guys here this year. So January and February did bare metal recoveries on a couple of the systems completed. We've done some virtual disaster recoveries for systems. So you can see the last 28 days of virtual disaster recoveries. So this one was actually recovered today. Let me see if I have screenshots. So here are my verification results. So some of the VDRs have failed for some reasons. Here's a verification result. So let's take a look at that one. Here's a screenshot from Virtual Machine. It expires in 2 weeks. This was a recovery that was August 24th. And
I love that black
screenshot. Not a good screenshot on that one. Nope. Let's see what. So screenshot is meant to be the login screen. This guy may have been taking longer to log in when we grabbed it. So I do also have system event log information here to see services started and so on. So it's twofold, but I like the pretty picture. So let me get another one here, and we'll farm out of my environment if maybe that one was just too old that I don't have the most recent. There we go. There's one. So my login screen, really nice today with Windows. You've got an actual time date stamp in the UI, so that way you've got some proof of performance there as well. So log information here as well. So that could also be sent out to you via email. I showed you the configuration for one machine, but there is a what we call a recovery console, which is a multi-instance tool. Let me see if I have it where I need it to be. So here you can see I've got multiple systems configured for continuous restore. And processes launching, full audit logs of the individual devices. If I come in and configure one of these, I'll see if that gives me what I want to see. So I'm doing virtual disaster recovery as one of the restore types. I could just be restoring files and folders or just a SQL database. Restore the SQL database to a new location, mount it in a different system, run it for reporting purposes. You could use it almost like back-end replication. Backup then restore versus true replication, however. And then here are my settings for that same virtual recovery. Here, going to Hyper-V, start the VM, and take a screenshot at the end. What am I restoring? You choose your volume. So in this case, I'm restoring C and D, but you can get very granular on what you're recovering. You control, now I mentioned the IP addresses. So it creates the VM like the original, but you can configure new IP addresses, new subnets, new gateways, because this isn't just about testing. This is about failover. So this same process, the VM that it's creating, is the one you're going to bring up when your production system fails. That's why we recommend you point this to a full hypervisor that can handle the load of your 2, your 4, your 7, X number of servers actually swapping over, which a small end appliance might not be able to handle more than 1 or 2 failovers at a time, and then you're going to have degraded backup performance. So we separate the backup process from the recovery process.
So Eric, Cliff brought up a really good and important point.
Okay.
The C drive is capitalized and the D drive is lowercase.
That's interesting.
Our OCD, Eric.
So I don't actually think that the D drive exists anymore on this system. So I think I've actually
Interesting.
dismounted it. So maybe it's just a historic piece. It's a good question. I don't know. I'll have to look at that one. This is server 4. I'll look into it. I don't have any data on there at the moment that I can recover, but there is a partition. I don't know whether it signifies something specifically or not. I apologize.
I just wanted to give you a hard time.
I do work very, very closely with development, so I'll log it as a defect if I can recreate it.
All right, so let me go through a couple more of these questions here real quick.
Sure.
Do you have a Kaseya integration?
I don't have a direct or a native Kaseya integration. I do have a full set of SOAP and REST-based APIs that you can query. And I do have automated deployment capabilities so that you can automate your configuration. Let's get back to the right UI.
And that would just be using like a batch or a PowerShell type script?
Batch, PowerShell, software deployment. I give you a deployment string. Let's see, let me close you. There we go. So when you come in and add a device, servers and workstations, we've not even mentioned Office 365 email-based backup. I'll save that for a future webinar with you guys. Just a teaser there. So you choose your site or your location. For instance, my Canadian office. And I can do a regular deployment and create a unique device, or I can do an automatic deployment, pick a profile, which is going to give me default selections, default filters, default update policies, and that's controllable by you. So we'll call this server production. And I now have a unique deployment string. This deployment string is going to be good for every device at that location. So you're just setting up a new customer, they got 100 devices. This one installation string will automatically deploy all those devices. It'll automatically create your encryption key, put it into our passphrase database, and start your selections, start your schedules. You're backed up and you're good to go. You can copy this to your clipboard. You can even download it, and the download is going to give you a unique installation file. So you could use this. You could drop this into a PowerShell. I've experimented with third-party software tools. I've plugged this into automation managers and different RMs. So you can give it the URL that you download from and then just use this string. You can even expand upon this string with more settings. There's more information here in the documentation about expanding the deployment. Or you can go with something like a PowerShell, which goes out and does grab the latest version and run this and make it part of a auto deploy. So if you're deploying VMs, this could be part of your stand-up of a new VM. So it automatically adds backup to it.
This is amazing. You mentioned a documents only option. Is there like a list of extensions included online somewhere for reference and documentation maybe?
There is. So documents is a deployment methodology also. It gives that same a much smaller string. So it's a single executable. Run this executable only on machines at this Canadian location, and they'll all be configured and added. The question was what is documents? Documents is this list of files.
I bet. Yep.
So documents, it's your Word, it's your business documents. So it's your Word, your PowerPoint, your Excels, your publisher publications, your dot notes, your dot sheets, dot pages. So if you've got Mac items as well, then we can grab those. The difference here is it's just a light version of. I'm sorry, PDF.
Yes. PDF.
Yep. I think there's 49, 57.
You're just pulling out red. I feel like you're about to go red, blue, hut.
we grow this, we expand it. So the two noticeable items that we don't protect. I don't protect videos. Most of the time those are MP3. There's MP3s or audio. So MP3s, movie files, MP4s. I don't grab any of that as part of documents. I don't grab
pictures, huh?
No pig. I don't grab JPEGs. No. And so something would you grab on something you would protect on a home machine or consumer machine, not really something you do with documents. Think of documents as the loss leader. It's something that we price very, very inexpensively for our partners. It's something they could bundle or include into every one of their deployments as a base level of maybe even free backup that they're offering for the combined other services they're providing. If there's patch and AV and remote monitoring, all those things, well, you include this in, and you've got a base level of protection. Then you've got a nice, easy upgrade path to a full-blown workstation license or even a server license. 28 days of retention. It runs twice a day. You don't have the speed vault. You don't have a lot of remote control capabilities. You just set it and forget it. You don't make selections. We find the documents on all the local volumes. So we look at the local C. We look at the local USB plugged-in hard drives, things like that. I'm not going to look at thumb drives. I'm not going to try to back up your iPhone if you plug it in, things or those kind of things. But it's meant to be. And
even if somebody's dumb enough to store all of their .docx files in Windows /System32, you'll find it and back it up.
Yeah. It searches the entire system, not just the My Documents directory. There's been requests for things like JPEGs because maybe an insurance office uses JPEGs for part of their business. Ideally, those wouldn't be stored on the workstations or the laptops, at least not permanently. They go into a network share. They go into a central repository, and I'll get those with the server side. So Documents is going to supplement all of those machines inside of your organization that you don't want to put a full-blown backup license on. It's part of that total layer of protection. If you think about ransomware comes in and it hits a couple of your servers and it hits the workstation that it came in through, and it starts hopping around the network depending on the variant. And then you go to look at your backups. Well, you've got all these backups of your servers, maybe your NAS devices, and a couple key employee that can hire or fire their workstations or laptops. But you might have this large group that you don't protect. And if there's business data on those machines that you didn't have stored on a network share, then it's either lost or you got to pay the ransom because you never backed them up. Users don't always put the data on a NAS device as you've told them to, and not everybody has roaming profiles set up and configured. So this is a nice, inexpensive way to give you total coverage or total protection across the environment. To grab those business documents, not the pictures and the memories from your vacation, but the business documents that are there. I've been asked about QuickBooks, the QuickBook files. Small offices, sometimes they'll run those on workstations. It'll be the only copy. I don't currently protect QuickBooks, so I would point you to a workstation version of that, or even the server version. But ideally, you're going to be doing QBBs anyway, and those are going to be stored on a network share or a location someplace.
Do you back up QBBs?
Not as part of the documents piece, but as standard licenses.
Of course, the full. I guess I'm just going to assume that like the full desktop or server, it's going to back up everything we throw at it.
Everything you throw at it.
But the documents one, it doesn't do QBBs either.
It does not. Not currently, although it is something of interest.
All right. While I know you said you would discuss Office 365 in another webinar,
I can touch on it if you'd like.
Is it going to back up OneDrive, or is this only emails?
So this is only email configuration. We are in a early access state for Office 365 email protection. So let's cancel. Let's add Office 365. So you would basically tell this my domain, and this is going to connect you as an admin out to your Office 365 environment, and it's going to be capable of backing up your mailboxes, your schedules, your contacts, your tasks, and so on. We provide up to 7 years of retention. It's going to get your user mailboxes as well as your shared mailboxes. We license based on user mailboxes, so the shared mailboxes are effectively free items. System's not even in a billing state today, so we're not billing for it. It's part of an early access program, So you can actually come out and start a trial and sign up for it off of our website and get that capability. It is currently limited to Office 365 Mail. So there's not currently a implementation for OneDrive or SharePoint.
So I'm gonna elaborate on that. It's currently limited to Exchange because it's doing mail, contacts, calendar, tasks, right?
Correct.
Okay. I just wanted to clarify, since you said it's only limited to mail, but then earlier you said.
Oh, okay. I stand corrected. So it is. It is limited to the Exchange component of Office 365. Yeah. So mail, calendars, contacts, those items. Yes.
And how much are you going to be charging per user?
There's promotions as part of the early access program. I believe the document. I'm not a sales guy, so let me think about this one for a second. I want to say that they're looking at $1.50 per mailbox, US. Okay. Since we're still in the early access program, they'll get that actual final detail when they sign up, and they'll get information on it. But there are promotions. They can lock in some promotional rates if they sign up for the early access. Connectedness now. So configuring this, super easy. I entered my Microsoft credentials. Here are my mailboxes. So this is the Gotham.computer domain. So I'm backing up the private email of Alfred, Barbara, Bruce, Dick, Edward, and Harley. And
I wouldn't back up Harley's stuff.
Well, you never know. So 10 mailboxes. This is going to run every 2 hours. And get protection for that environment. We're complementing or supplementing the retention capabilities that already exist inside of Office 365. So you've got your recycle bins and your double down recycle bins and those kind of items. So we're processing the environments, the ability to, let's say you misplace an item. You haven't deleted it, but you misplace an item in Office 365. You can come in here, use our search queries, find the items you want to, and restore them. When we do our restores, we restore back to the current mailbox, and we
in the current location too.
No, actually, so we restore back to the current mailbox, but we create a new folder called restore or restored. I don't remember the exact nomenclature on it, with a time date stamp. So that way, these are the items that you found, and we drop them back into this folder. So we're not going to overwrite anything in your existing mailbox. So if it was already there, it'll still be there, but you've restored it to this new folder. Then you can move it inside of Exchange or Outlook, wherever you want. Same thing for contacts and calendars. It'll create a new restore calendar with these items on it. So that way we're not going to damage anything that you already have inside of a user.
Any word on when Exchange archives can be backed up?
Not my project. So yeah, I'm afraid I don't know on that side of the house. They actually might work right now. I'm afraid I don't know. I'll have to take that when it's offline and get back to you.
Let's see here.
Good questions, guys. I appreciate the depth you guys are going into here. What about bare metal recovery? Is that something that's interesting?
I would assume so. We all love our image-based recovery. Well, you know what? I don't know if bare metal, because a lot of us are doing VMs these days. What do you guys want to see? Do you guys want to see bare metal? Eric said, "Not me." So, or wait, not me. We're all doing virtual machines, or not me. I don't want to see bare metal. Zach said, "Sure." Okay, so yeah, let's see some bare metal. And then someone else said, "No, hold on a second. I don't want to see anything else. I just want to know what it costs."
So, once again, not a sales guy. I can give you some rough guidelines here. Obviously, it's going to vary by region.
I think I can answer this. If you go with like the no minimums version, it's roughly like 10 an endpoint, or like I want to say 40 a server.
The pay-as-you-go, no commitments, right? So list price I think is 10 a workstation, 10 an endpoint, 50 50 a server.
50 server.
And then if you're looking at commitments or some monthly minimums, it'll get down to 7 and 35, I believe. There are some fair use caps and sizes to these machines. We do pool that data, however. So fair use is 500 gigs per server, 100 gigs per workstation. If one server's over, one server's under, but as long as you're under that fair use cap, then you're fine. Fully loaded at that commitment, it means you're effectively paying 7 cents a gigabyte. Overages are charged or billed at those 7 cents a gigabyte if you have systems that go way above. Obviously, that's a starting point. Talk to your account managers, let them know what you're looking at, where you're going, how you plan to run this, and they can work with you and get you an actual quote. Document price points at $1 a workstation. Can't beat basic backup for $1, right?
That's actually pretty good.
And then of course regular workstations is $7, so it's actually not even that bad of an upsell for the 100 workstations in an organization. Maybe 20 of them, 5 of them you need the full protection. The rest of them you can get by with the documents approach.
The fair use is selected size, right?
Fair use is based on selected size, yes.
And are there any plans to maybe increase the fair use caps that you're aware of?
I know there's been discussions on it, but I couldn't tell you where those are at in any decisions or sign-off stages. But yeah, it is something we're constantly looking at. We're constantly looking at price, market, competitive, the perception.
Mm-hmm. Right,
so the thing you don't want to get lost or caught in is the fact that this is a fully featured, scalable, upgradable solution, single pane of glass, Mac, Windows, Linux. It's not the 2 cents a gigabyte you can get from Azure for just raw storage, or Amazon and the cost you can get with Glacier, those kind of things. You might get the actual storage piece a whole lot cheaper. So look at the solution as a whole and from a value perspective, not just at what the fully loaded cost per gigabyte might be for your backups. Because once again, it is based on selected size. And if you've got 28 days worth of retention and 12 end of months in there, you're still being billed based on selected size, even though you've got a year's worth of recovery capability there, or possibly more.
Awesome. One question is the virtual disaster recovery portal.
Mm-hmm.
They said it's being accessed via the local backup client. Can that also be done from the cloud portal if the local client's not available?
So the recovery console is a application that's deployed on the endpoint where you're doing the recovery. So if you've got a Hyper-V box at your customer's in location, you're going to access that or install that and configure it locally there. You can't access the console from a management perspective. It requires you locally to configure and enter and type your encryption keys and so on to configure the environment. You can, once it's configured, come in and remotely access the individual virtual machines that are configured.
But that's using like Screen Connector.
No. That's available in here. Oops. So for this system here, when I go to launch the backup client, I gotta find where it's going to work. So here's my backup instance. Here's my recovery instance. So that recovery instance is the configuration that's sitting there doing continuous restore in the background. So that's what I configured in that recovery console.
So if you were to click on the backup instance, well, can I see what happens?
I get a broken connection. Let's try that one more time. Launch the backup client, the backup instance.
Oh, okay. I couldn't tell at first. You got a little B and a little R inside that circle.
Correct, and it's not gonna behave nicely for me right now. But the backup instance, the recovery instance. If I'm doing bare metal recovery, it'll create an instance here for the bare metal recovery instance as well. so that way you can do some remote management of the BMR environment. If you're on site, you plug in the USB stick, you start to restore, you have to leave and go to another call, what have you, then you can still remote in and manage and monitor and see what's going on from a BMR perspective. We've even got a VNC instance that you can enable or run inside of it, that if you do use a Screen Connect or Take Control or MSP Anywhere to get into another system inside of the same network, you can actually VNC and get command prompt level access during the BMR. So, short of inserting a CD and booting or a USB stick and booting, you can do almost everything remotely.
Excellent. Okay, so Cliff said his rep told him that the fair use was stored, not selected, after dedupe and compression.
From a default state, base go to market, I would say that's incorrect. There probably is or are some models, depending on use, that they can adjust or work that with. Your sales rep's going to be your definitive answer on that one. So I'd follow back up with them and get confirmation on it. You should have signed some kind of agreement or
just see what the agreement says.
Environment when you went to production. That will state your fair use in there as well, and how it's measured.
So, and then I see in the chat, Zach says he includes backup on every deal, and he's not even using 60% of the allocation of fair use storage. And
nice.
Then Robert said Windows 10 is just creating huge system state backups that eat into the fair use allotment. And then my rep told me it was selected, not storage.
Yeah. So selected is the default. Anything outside of that would have had to have been a discussion for some kind of unique configuration or environment. Let's see to that other one. Oops, I got to get back to the right screen here. Backup client. Your selections and your fair use. A little earlier, I showed you a list of processed files and how much data was actually being transferred, and you can double count or you can double select some items. If you're backing up VMware at if you're backing up Hyper-V at a host level, there's no reason to back up the individual VHD files as part of the Hyper-V file system. If you're backing up SQL using the SQL agent, don't back up the SQL logs and databases as part of the file system. And that's going to be a matter of excluding files and folders either in your directory tree or setting backup filters. So I'll go full screen on this one. So there's no reason to back up EDB files on this machine. VHD files or VHDXs as part of the file system backup. Database files, temp files, an OST. What are you going to do with an OST file? Once you recover, it's going to get resynced from the cloud anyway. I could argue there are a couple unique cases where you might want a UST. The downloads directory. If you are one of our Essential users or our RMM users, the temp directories where all the patches, the caches, the AV updates, why would you back those up? Windows updates, and I don't have it in my list here, but the latest Windows 10, actually it is here. It's the Windows 10 upgrade or Windows 10 update. This administrative Windows BT share. It's 4 gigs of data or more that's encrypted that, why would you back that up? Your windows.old file. There are lots of selections you can do here or exclusions you can do to cut your selected size down and still have a recoverable bare metal environment. We're not an image-based solution, so you have that granularity to select. Now, if I were to come in here and say C:\Windows and I excluded my Windows directory, well, guess what? I don't have enough data now to do bare metal recovery, but I would drop my selected size down. It's really a question of what services do you want to provide to your customer? We give you the ability. It doesn't mean you have to back that directory up. If you're using default images, default deployment methodologies, automation from a deployment perspective, and all you need is my documents and application data and certain other components, then just protect that. If you want the full image or the full synthesized image from a recovery perspective, then there are still exclusions you can make that won't break that. Temporary internet files, cookies, there's no reason. Hopefully that'll address their question. That'll get you past the fair. In a lot of cases, that'll get you past the fair use. And I'm growing this right now. These we can make available to partners for selections. Everybody's environment's a little bit different. some of these will go into global excludes here in the near future, so you won't have to exclude them. Like, our applications that are SolarWinds based, we should be excluding those automatically if they're not needed. And I'm not right now.
That's actually the question I'm going to ask. Is there a way for us to say globally, I just don't want to back up anything that's .tmp?
Oh yeah.
Or is that only client level, or?
It's both. If I look at a profile level, so I mentioned during the deployment you can create profiles, and I actually picked one. So if I don't work at a client level, I can work at a profile level, and I can say that I want to back up my servers, and I can have those exclusions here inside of a profile. Oops, I'm locked. I need to be at a higher level. My permissions don't allow me to edit these at this level. You can see they're locked right here. Let's go up to my MSP level. Now they are no longer locked. And I can come to servers, and I can set star.tmp, star.txt, /temporary temp int files, or whatever that appropriate path is. I could do !:/ temp for any volume. So you can get pretty creative on your standard expressions here. And once these are in a profile, I can clone these profiles to go down to end customers, and then keep the same set of exclusions, modify the selections a little bit, tell it to use only local selections, schedule your frequencies. I want to run every hour. Don't start during working hours on certain days of the week. So lots of things you can set at a global or site or customer level. We do honor the Windows Do Not Backup registry setting as well. So anything that's in the Windows Do Not Backup registry, like your offline files folders, your certain registry entries, your swap file, and your Hibernate files, we exclude those automatically. It's just that temporary internet files used to be excluded by those settings as well. Now that we've got 4 or more commercial browsers that you can utilize, they all have their own unique paths. So I have those in my lists as well.
And then going back a little ways.
Sure.
Ed asked a follow-up question. We were talking about booting and having a screenshot available.
Yes.
So he said, booting it as a virtual machine and then taking a screenshot doesn't actually prove it was restored successfully, only that it got to the login screen. Is there something else that can be done to vary services and databases, or to verify services and databases are started and functional? And I believe that you showed us, we're able to look at that whole system event log there.
So here, volume should have a copy requester in a running state. So you could see a service, SQL service started. You could see services running, but even a service running doesn't mean that the database is going to mount. So there's so many layers you could take this. So the extent I guess I'm going to have is what you're seeing here. At any point, you could come in and actually boot this virtual machine yourself and do those prescribed individual tests, whether that be with PowerShell scripts or manual tasks. What I found is that most partners aren't doing disaster recovery testing, and they're not even testing their restores from their backups. But the ones that are doing DR testing, they charge their customers for it. It is a value stream or revenue margin stream for you, or it justifies your cost per month in your service plan. So definitely something you can charge for. It's a differentiator that you have. If you're using this tool to do the automated verification points, and it's happening on a daily basis, corresponding with your backups, then here you've got those automated proof of performance checkpoints. What you might do then is schedule a higher level of service where you or your technicians are going in and performing some of those tests. Or better yet, you involve your customers in the DR testing. Who better is going to know if the applications and the databases are working the way they should, boot the environment in the hypervisor, take a checkpoint so that you can roll back, let them go in and manipulate and play in that isolated network, obviously, run a report, do a query, those kind of things. Get them involved in a quarterly or annual, every 6 month DR test, charge them for the privilege, and it's going to be that added layer of proof of performance that, yes, things are working the way they should be. Would I like full automated scripting and some other items in there? I definitely would. It's just the possibilities are endless. So not anything on the short term.
What kind of bandwidth do you have for restores? You know, like if, for example, someone's using Google Fiber and they've got a 1 gig connection, how fast are we actually going to be able to download from you?
So our data centers utilize multiple. So data centers utilize multiple storage nodes in multiple racks. Each node is multiple gigabit connections on different network segments on different network providers, and multiple gigabit connections coming into the data centers, or 10G connections, depending on the regions. We don't auto throttle or that's what I'm looking for. Not auto. We don't pick an artificial limit from a throttle perspective. So the restore is going to pull at the client level. So remember, the data is deduped, compressed, and encrypted. We try to run with very low resources. So the restores, the backup client itself uses at most 1 CPU core, and it'll use up to 500 gigabytes of RAM. No, I'm sorry, 500 gigs of RAM. And it's going to pull the cabinets that it needs down, cache them, store them if it needs them for other restores, pull out the items it needs, rehydrate the deduped data, and lay it down on disk. So it's a pull model. So it's going to request and buffer data as it needs it. So the CPU, the bandwidth, the speed of the disk, those are all going to be factors in the restore. I was going to see if I had a screenshot here. I actually asked a customer to send this to me. I helped them with a bare metal recovery sometime last week, and we were watching the restore. This was utilizing their local speed vault plugged into a 2-drive NAS on a local gigabit connection, and we were peaking around the 700 megabit per second, low end around the 400 to 500 megabit per second. And then, of course,
what was the high end?
Around 7.
7 gigabit?
So around 700 megabit on a gigabit connection. And obviously those are going to vary. A low-end machine with low amounts of RAM that's having trouble processing, or if the data is highly compressed and not dedupable, those are all going to play factors in how it pulls the data and lays it down. That guy had the vault, so it was not even taking advantage of the cloud. If it were on a Google Fiber connection or AT&T or whoever's fiber connection, we can pull those or hit those same kind of rates from the cloud. Most of our traffic is upload traffic, the nightly backups, but the channels are it's the same upload as download capabilities. So we're kind of a reverse commute, if you will, from what most internet providers are seeing.
Okay. Let's see here. Speed, we already talked about that. Backup systems running good. We talked about that. Can you download a VHD of a backed up server from the cloud management portal?
No. So we don't store VHDs in our cloud. The cloud is random encrypted ones and zeros. So there is no VHD in the cloud. Any VHD that you have or create, you create on the local client or through that recovery console. Now you can create it reactively on demand after the customer calls and there's a failure, or you could configure it for continuous restore so that it's sitting there waiting and it's just a matter of turning it on when the customer calls. Or it could just create a flat VHD file on disk that you're going to copy onto a USB stick and sneakernet out to the customer, or roll out a off-lease server as a hypervisor and stand up a hypervisor in their environment. We've got partners that do that as well. They provide the hypervisor in the event of an outage with the data on it.
Okay. Um,
If I had a VHD in the cloud, then it'd be a security breach because a VHD could be attached, mounted, booted, worked with. So.
I realize you're going to bounce this to an account manager
Okay.
who doesn't exist. I don't know what that means. But is SolarWinds able to provide internal use slash not for resale, so I don't have to pay to test out the standalone backup product internally?
So we do offer a trial. So you can sign up for a trial. You can sign up for as many trials as you wanted to, really, if you want, while you're testing the environment out. If you talk to your account manager and you need to go beyond the standard 28-day period, as long as you're keeping them involved in the loop, they can extend your trials. So that's going to be the way, the best way to work. If you're already an established customer and you want some test bed environment or play environment, things like that, I think still starting a new trial, standing that up would probably be your best bet.
Okay. So no true NFRs.
No true NFRs. No, for the most part, NFRs go stale. The data sits there. There's no activity on them. It's burning cloud resources, things like that could be available to other customers. So the trial process is probably the best. No reason you shouldn't put documents on all of your internal systems, though.
Fair enough. That's all the questions so far.
Wow, really good stuff, guys.
I say so far, but holy cow, it's already 2:30. with all this typing I've been doing, I thought maybe it was 1:50 at best. So let's do this. Let's look at these poll results.
Okay.
I think you might find this interesting.
Definitely.
So of everyone that was here at the most earlier, we had 15 people live here in the room. 5 people used SolarWinds backup today. 10 did.
Nice. Okay.
67% of the people do not use any SolarWinds products at all today. Most of them, more than half, are backing up between 1 and 99 desktops. 40% are backing up between 1 and 9 servers. More than half are doing image-based backups on desktops and servers.
Okay.
And I have no idea how, but we tied all the way across on my last and yet most important question. Star Wars or Star Trek? So, what are your thoughts on this?
Well, I'm kind of I'm definitely pro Star Trek, but I do have my toys as well for Star Wars.
That's not what I meant, Eric.
Oh, that wasn't the question. I'm sorry. That was the last poll.
What are your? That's true. That's true. What are you thinking? Like, you hear, more than half of the people here are doing image-based backups on their desktops and servers. We've got less than 100 desktops on average. We've got under 10 servers on average.
So image level and it's not a full question. So there is a preconceived notion that file level backup is for selective data. I want to get my documents and this, and I want to get that. And that you need image level backup if you want things like bare metal recovery or virtualization and disaster recovery booting and so on. And we took the opposite approach. We've got file and folder level backup for the granularity to get exclusions. Don't back up things you don't need. Don't back up volumes you don't want or directories you don't want. And we still give you the benefits of recovery benefits that you would get with an image level solution. We've got tracking technology, what we call our backup accelerator, so that you can see the same kind of speed benefits that you'd have with image level solutions. So it's kind of best of both worlds if you think about it. You get all of the granularity and all of the recovery capabilities. So I really try to displace that. People will lump file and folder backup with things like Google Drive and Dropbox and those kind of things, which they're not. Those are sync and share tools that really don't until recently, provide a level of backup, and they are susceptible to damage and encryption and so on. I'd encourage the folks to look if you're stuck on the image because it was the only option. Take a look at this and see if it can shrink your data sizes, decrease the amount of data you're sending across the wire to the cloud. A lot of people will do image only and they'll keep it local because they can't get the images, or at least not all the images, off to the cloud. So it's a bolt-on cloud offering for some copy. We store data locally and remote. I made you think of a question.
Yeah, so you've got your local speed vault.
Yep.
Can the local speed vault do the whole C&D drive image, whatever you want to think of it as, and then we just send some of maybe the mission critical files off to the cloud?
It's a good question, but no, actually it can't. The vault is meant to be a mirror of of what you back up. So whatever's in the cloud and stored exists on the vault. Now that super high level of data deduplication that I've mentioned, a lot makes this possible. So I've got my data selected on this machine, 156 gigs. On my speed vault is 220 gigs used. In the cloud is 222 gigs used. If I go look at my restore capabilities here, and I want to go back, I have data back I have data back to February the 1st. So these are our archive points that I can restore.
That's really cool. And I assume some of those days don't have any color because that machine may have just been off.
Weekend, the machine was off. So when we look at it's not just one daily backup either. When I look at the 5th, I'm backing up every hour here from 8 a.m. until 11 p.m. Except for 9 and 10. Why is that? Let's look at that. I don't have a 9 and 10 schedule for some reason. Interesting. I'll have to look at that. But
can a laptop out in the field get an image-based backup sent online without the use of an external hard drive?
Could a laptop in the field get an image-based backup without the use of an external hard drive?
Ed, are you talking about the speed vault?
So
I mean that.
So so I'm working on a laptop here. Now I have a speed vault for this laptop, but it's not required. If I've got a remote user that's only backing up to the cloud, then all the data exists in the cloud. If you needed to, that laptop is gone. It was stolen. The MSP orders a replacement laptop, pulls one off the shelf, installs the bare metal recovery tool, boots it up, picks the point in time, and it reimages the machine like the other. We can support dissimilar hardware, UEFI, GPT, all of those pieces. If they didn't want to go that route, if they wanted to just synthesize a virtual machine and let it run on top of the Windows 10 Pro hypervisor temporarily, they could do that. They could even stand it up in their own Hyper-V or the customer's Hyper-V or VMware that they have. SolarWinds does not currently provide a SolarWinds hosted recovery location or recovery target. So there is no login to SolarWinds.com and boot your virtual machine in our facilities.
So Speed Vault is only there to get you quick access to the data in a recovery.
Correct.
Speed Vault is not required to do backups.
Correct. It's an optional component. This is my Speed Vault, and it looks like.
But what if? And yeah, okay. So what if? And I'm not going to worry about. I don't care about overages and fair use crap right now. Okay, we're just playing the what if game.
Sure.
What if I've got 1 terabyte of stuff on a computer system that needs backed up?
Okay. So a terabyte of data on a system, the initial backup, let's say it dedupes and compresses down to 700 gigs in space, give or take, probably a little more than that.
That's a lot to transfer over the wire. Is there an other solution?
There is. So your initial backup, it can go to the vault and to the cloud simultaneously. It will complete, whichever one is faster. If it completes to the vault, it will finish and tell you that operations are complete. It will slowly, behind the scenes, synchronize up to the cloud. if you allow it to, until they're fully in sync. So if the device is offline, the cloud's offline, the vault's offline, they'll sync behind the scenes. If you don't want to do that, you don't want to send that across for the 7 machines over that slow connection, we have seeding capabilities, which allow me to specify a network share or a local drive letter, which will basically redirect the cloud back up to this local vault, or this local seed path temporarily. First backup or any backup that you choose to seed will go to that location. You either ship that drive to us, encrypted, deduped, and compressed, or you take it to a location where the MSP has a faster upload, Google Fiber, and you can self-service upload that yourself into our cloud. And that is using the server tool, which is available here for seeding purposes.
That's cool.
Reverse seeds are possible also. So you had a speed vault and it failed, or you've never had a speed vault, but you need to do a restore and you're waiting on the hardware to come in. You could pre-download the speed vault to your facility while you're waiting on the hardware to come in to help speed the restore when it actually gets there.
Perfect. I think that answers.
So 24/7 follow the sun support.
Okay.
No service fees or anything charged to that support. It's accessible. You do rate your service tickets when you open them. There's chat-based tickets as well as dialing in. If you've got mission critical data loss outage systems, obviously dial in and talk to a tech live as opposed to starting an online chat. Please always tell us about the level of severity. The tech doesn't always assume the same level of severity that you may assume. So please let us know. If you need to escalate and move up the chain to a application engineer, a backline engineer, those kind of things, then please do that. And involve us if you've got ransomware, if you've got how do I do this, when do I do that, deployment configurations, things you're looking for.
Okay. Zach asked if the standby backup image ever comes back.
Standby image. So standby image was a generation 1 disaster recovery option that we created. It's been deprecated. It was removed in 17.9, so September of last year. So any versions of the software released that you deploy that are newer than 17.9, they don't have the option. If you deployed an older client that had standby image turned on in 17.9 and then upgraded it, it would keep the feature. So the feature doesn't go away. We're just not doing new development on it. It created a local VHD file during your backups and updated it behind the scenes, but it had some limitations. It would not work with NAS devices that were sparse, that were using SMB1 or SMB 2.0 shares. It had to be at least 2.1 or later. Couldn't be compressed or encrypted. There were several limitations. Virtual disaster recovery supports the same environments. It supports multiple hypervisors, and it can do file and application level restore. So the majority of the functionality has been moved or migrated over to the recovery console, multi-instance. It does mean you have to have a second machine, though, to do that environment, whereas standby image was each machine taking care of its own automated VM creation and restores. If the system failed, you still had to have another machine in order to boot the VM and work with it. So we felt like we were putting all of our eggs in one basket, and it was just limited by the hypervisor support. So deprecated in favor of Recovery Console as a Gen 2 or next generation offering. If you still want to use it, talk to our support guys. They can get you an older client to start your deployments with, and then use that for your deployments, turn the settings on, and then allow it to do the auto updates.
All right. If I do file and folder backup with SolarWinds, will it conflict with Windows Server backup, image backup? Can I do belt and suspenders in that case?
They like my analogy. That's good.
They love that analogy.
So if you're going to do us for file and folder, you want to make sure that the schedules are not going to overlap with the schedules that you've set for the Windows image level. The Windows image level, if it's what I know, it's creating a persistent image, so it doesn't have to do like a full incremental, full differential approach. So you should be fine. Just watch your timing, and watch that you don't fill up all of your VSS space. So the amount of space you configure for the VSS snapshots that are stored, make sure that those aren't going to be used or fully utilized by one or the other application. And that's going to be true for any third-party tool that you use. The only other place I could think of a major conflict is going to be when you've got something like SQL Enterprise Manager and you're doing SQL fulls and incrementals or fulls and differentials through Enterprise Manager, because you need log truncation and log rollback and all of that kind of capabilities. Those create a chain where the incrementals are dependent upon the full. And if you break them or tell it you commit another backup in the middle, it will disturb everything before then. So we can go into a special copy-only mode so we can work right alongside SQL Enterprise. That's only going to come into play when you've got true DBAs using SQL as opposed to just your general SQL users.
Suggestions for locating the speed vault on the network to make it less vulnerable to ransomware, NAS, or non-domain joined PC?
Very, very good question. So I'm using a local drive, which is not my recommendation. When you go to configure network share, we actually give you those recommendations. So if you are running a domain environment and you're using domain security to access the NAS device for the speed vault, be careful there. You're changing passwords frequently. You don't want to break connectivity to your speed vault because you forgot to come in and change this. I'll typically recommend workgroup level security for those NAS devices and use unique sets of credentials so that you're not using user shares on the same NAS. You don't want map drives and map volumes so that your cryptos can jump and penetrate the vault. So workgroup level security, unique usernames and passwords to access the LSV. We are smart enough that if the vault is corrupted or encrypted, we're not going to synchronize it up to the cloud. But it's not usable if it's damaged. So you do want to protect it. If you do just share out a volume on a Windows server, then set up unique security. Don't just use an admin share to access it.
Awesome.
Remediation.
Yeah.
So backup is critical. It's the last line of defense if you run into a ransomware. It's not your first line of defense though. So don't jump the gun. I don't care whose backup you're using. Customers hit by ransomware, don't immediately start cleaning the environment thinking you can restore from backup. Isolate the machines, look through your logs, figure out when your last good backup is. Use your logs to figure out how the infection came in. You'll see the changes in anybody's backup application. You'll see the changes, the large amount of new files, the deletion of files. You can pinpoint where it came in. Measure twice, cut once. So try virtual recoveries, try bare metal recoveries. Pull the hard drive out of that laptop, plug a new hard drive in, upgrade SSD while you're at it, and recover the system that way. But don't break the customer's ability to pay the ransom until you know you can get the data back for them. And if your customers ask you to pay the ransom, you probably need to figure out how you're going to do that. If the data doesn't exist, it's not your data. I don't really encourage us to pay ransoms and so on, but ultimately it's your customer's data and they will find a new provider or somebody to help them if you're not willing to help them. So know how to buy Bitcoin and recommend the higher level of protection. Under protection is as bad as no protection, but in all cases, if there's a device that wasn't backed up, it is sometimes quicker to possibly pay the ransom than to rebuild all that data, especially if you don't have a good backup.
All right. My brain hurts. In a good way.
It's a lot of stuff to take in. I could talk for 4 hours on this without covering too much at the same time, but backup is backup. It's an established, mature product. I don't do anything different than anybody else does. For the most part, it's backup, it's restore, it's vanilla, but it's a combination of all of the pieces: the multi-tenancy, the security, the high level of dedupe and compression that makes it all work. There's specific deployment methodologies and automation you can come to make this turnkey, click done. I'll normally recommend people go in, they set up a good, better, best offering. This is my loss leader I bundle in with everything. This is my basic offering. This is my premium or my platinum offering, and turn on and off the features that they don't want to sell or provide to their customers. You don't support Mac, turn the feature off. You don't support bare metal recovery at this price point you're going to charge your customer, then turn that feature off so it's not there or viable or visible. That way you don't get into a case of putting more recovery effort into a system than you're charging for.
That's a really good idea.
So customers assume service levels if you don't define them. Now, you might have a service level that says you're going to back up this server and these volumes on these days and retain it for this amount of time. But when it comes to data recovery, you may or may not have a service level. It might be time and material. It might be a billable rate, a predefined rate. It could be built into your bundled package. First restore each month is free. Second one is chargeable. Second ransomware, third ransomware is chargeable. Whatever you want to define, but define some of those packages for your customers up front. I don't care whose product you use, because if you don't set that expectation, they'll make their own expectation of how deep they want you involved during that recovery. And you could easily sink your entire team into a site for a large ransomware restore. If something was missed, we didn't have AV and patch on this one machine and something got in, and now we're using backup to restore things. Well, it's not a backup problem. Backup's your tool to recover. And just because they paid for backup doesn't mean they've paid you for restore. So think about those. You're doing this to help your customers and obviously grow your business and the offerings. You don't want this to turn into a time sink or a money sink. So set those expectations up front. That's all the business advice I have.
I really appreciate it, Eric. This has been so fun to watch because, I can tell that you really know what you're talking about. You really enjoy what you do. And that's reflected in your demeanor and your presentation style and everything. So
good to hear.
I really do appreciate that. For those of you that are still here with us, next week we are going to do 2 webinars. One of them is going to be a roundtable on Thursday, and the other one is going to be Pulseway, an RMM solution. So go check those out. If you are not a member of MSP webinars, there's a lot more content than just these webinars. So feel free to go to the website, www.mspwebinars.com. There's a button you can click to tell you why you should join. Go check that out and let me know if you have questions. There is a chat feature on that website as well. For those of you that are members, I recommend hopping into the Zoom room after this, and we can have a nice discussion about Eric and his last name and how it so closely reflects his hairstyle. We can chat about SolarWinds backup, how cool I think it is, and anything else that you guys want to talk about. So, Eric, thank you so much for doing this. Thank you, everyone that was able to make it here. And I do hope that you all have a wonderful, wonderful week.